tonight for another Core Diet webinar. Tonight we're going to be chatting about one of my favorite topics, is navigating the grocery store. While many of the clients I work with are very knowledgeable in nutrition after they've done some work with us, they can still get quite frustrated or confused when we start walking down those aisles, whether it's the front of the label of what you read in the latest, online nutrition blog or something. So tonight I hope to get you going on a clearer path next time you've got your grocery list and you head to the store. So we're going to get started. I just wanted to mention one thing, that if you could please post your questions in your little chat room there, and I will get to them at the end of the presentation. But just as we go through the slides, if anything comes up that you have a question on, please feel free to post it right there. So we're going to be just going over some grocery shopping 101 tips. We'll be chatting a bit about planning ahead and how that's just going to make your life much easier. Knowing the layout of your local store or stores, wherever you go grocery shopping where you live. Paying attention to labels, not only the front of the label, but as well as the back of the label. There's important information there. Scoping out the ingredients, really learning how to be an ingredient detective, and some tips for the fridge. So 2/3 of what most people buy at the grocery store, they actually had no intention of buying. But actually, this is what the supermarkets and grocery stores want you to do. They encourage this behavior, and we'll learn how they do that. They are designed to get you to buy and eat more food. That's the goal at the end of the day, and it's not always, they don't always have your best intentions at heart. Planning ahead, this is probably one of the best tips that I can give you right here, is to plan ahead for many reasons, whether it's to save money in your wallet or to improve your health. But it always has to be done before you actually get to the store. And I always say, if you don't have to plan every single meal, you don't need to plan your breakfast, your snacks, your lunch, every single one. The most important that I always say start off with is, at the very least, plan your dinner for the week. And do it for 7 days in advance, and this should match your training. Sit down on a Sunday or a Saturday, look at what your training involves for the next week, figure out what you really need for post-workout and pre-workout fuels, and then plan those dinners around. We all know we can sort of put together a quick breakfast, snack, or lunch with some key ingredients that we have just laying around in the house. The dinners can become very challenging, and if you're someone that is working out in the morning and evening, the last thing you want to do is decide at 8 o'clock at night what you're going to have for dinner that night. So the best thing that I can give you, the best tip, is to write it down. I actually recommend doing it old school style and buying one of those dry erase boards and putting it on the side of your fridge. It's actually what I have here. There's a lot of fancy apps out there. Many people like them. I personally find that I just write it. It's right in front of my face. Every time I open up the fridge, I know what I need. It takes an extra 5 or 10 minutes, and it's just about creating a new habit. In the first couple of weeks, it might seem like an extra chore, writing it down and planning, but you'll find it will really save you a lot of time, money, and you'll be eating much, much better. And it will also give you much more control in making those core choices. So one thing that you want to do is in this list, is that you sort of want to organize your list into 2 categories, and making sure that you actually stick to the list and using it as a visual reminder when you go through the store. This is what I recommend doing, is splitting up into 2 categories. One would be your common foods list. These are the items that you personally eat often, or items that we're going to recommend that you have on this list, that are all included in the core diet. You could probably put together most of your meals from this list if you had to, but that would get very boring and repetitive. These are great for your breakfast, your snacks, your lunches, and if you constantly keep these stocked in your fridge, then you should always have something to fall back on. The food groups list. This is going to really help with variety and keeping it fresh. Otherwise, you will probably find they're going to be eating the same meals night after night. And while most, we're all creatures of habit, and most of the foods we eat are repetitive, you do want to make sure you still keep it fun. So I generally recommend breaking it down into actual food groups. You know, have your vegetable, have your fruit, your protein. I'll give you an example in a couple slides. So really make sure you're creating balance. Here is a pretty decent sized common foods list that are all core friendly. These are things that if you just had to give a list to someone in your household to run to the store, buy these things, they could be organized in a much different manner, maybe the way your store layout is set up. But one of my favorites is Greek yogurt. That's always stocked in the fridge. A veggie burger or a turkey burger. I see so many times, I work with a lot of athletes and clients, and most of their dinners are grilled chicken, which is a wonderful source of high-quality animal protein. But you want to change it up a bit and keep it fun. So veggie or turkey burgers, and these are, you can keep these in your freezer, so you can just always have them on hand. Hummus, Joseph's low-carb wrap. Of all the low-carb wraps out there, we have found that this is probably the highest, the best quality one. Depending on where you live in the country, you might have to use a different brand. But if you can get Joseph, this is a wonderful product to have. These are great for those post-workout windows when you're trying to create a calorie deficit, trim down your body composition. These are always a nice go-to to make a nice wrap or something. Low-fat cottage cheese, light string cheese is always great with an apple or piece of fruit to have for a snack. Your favorite core ratio bars. We'll talk about the core ratio equation, whichever one that might be. Nuts, dates, and prunes. TLC bars and Nature Valley bars. These are great for pre-workout fuels. I use Nature Valley bars all the time. There's tons of different flavors. 85% plus cocoa chocolate. What are you going to do with this? We have some recipes on our Core Diet website that uses this for whether you're going to put it in for a fun dessert. You know, freeze a banana with some peanut butter or almond butter, and you can put cocoa in it. You can use the cocoa in your yogurt. There's lots of different ways. That's a much better source of fulfilling that sweet tooth than just a regular piece of chocolate. Fruit. I have bananas, apples, and berries here. Obviously, you want to eat what's in season, what you can buy local, what's in your store. But bananas and apples you can get all year round, and they stay pretty long in in terms of they're not going to go bad in 3 days. Berries. Berries are not in season all year round. You can probably get them all year round. I always urge to eat them when they're more in season and eat locally, but this is definitely a staple for all its antioxidants, phytonutrients. Berries work great in the plain yogurt. You can even buy these frozen and keep them frozen and use them in your yogurt as well. Your vegetables, you always want to make sure they have some sort of mixed leafy green. Sweet potatoes are wonderful in post-workout windows. They're low glycemic. They're filled with nutrients much better than the potato, tomato, broccoli. And then as far as whole grains, so in your post-workout window, whether you're utilizing it or not, and you're going to have a whole grain, we always urge you to have the highest quality. Quinoa and Ezekiel bread are wonderful products, and again, Ezekiel bread can be kept in your freezer. And in terms of protein, whether it's grilled chicken breast, canned tuna, or salmon. So these are staples that I would recommend, and adjust it and tailor it to yourself that you keep on stock all the time. And there should be no reason why you can't throw together some sort of meal if you weren't prepared. Food group list. So this is just an example. Mine looks slightly different. So this is broken down into your proteins, your carbohydrates, your vegetables, your fat, your fat to eat. Now, obviously, this is not something that I designed. There might be a few things on here that I wouldn't necessarily recommend all the time, but this is a good place to start, and you can go down your vegetable list and even take it one step further and break it down into making sure you're getting fruits from the red group and the green group. Try to make sure that variety is there. We actually have, if you have access to our Core Diet member area, I have a fruit and vegetable list that you can print out, and I always give the challenge to my clients to, post it on the fridge, and every time you have one of those fruits or vegetables in the course of a month or 2 weeks, cross it off and see what it looks like at the end of the month. So we're still on planning ahead. So if you can, I recommend shopping only once per week. There might be that you have to run to the grocery store one time midweek to just pick up a few fresh items, but you really should be able to shop once a week and be all set. It does require some planning and writing down items as they empty. I write it down right on that dry erase board. And if you keep that list there, you'll find that you'll minimize those trips to the shopping store. Nothing's worse when you go into a grocery store, you spend $100, $150, your cart is filled.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Web Events Made Easy. Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an attendee in listen-only mode.
Level of pesticides and chemicals in order. And so these are the ones that if you have to choose, which most people do, is to go organic on these particular fruits and vegetables when possible. The number one on the list is apples and celery, strawberries, peaches, spinach, so on and so forth. They also have developed a Clean 15, which is very helpful because people are always wondering which ones can I buy non-organic. And this list that's recently come out is listed here. So if you do have to pick and choose and you can only buy certain foods, organic, not organic, I would try to stick to this list as much as possible. That's certainly going to help the budget. It will go a long way. Natural. So on to our second category. What does natural even mean? So according to the USDA, a food can only be labeled natural if it contains no artificial ingredients or added colors and is minimally processed. But this is sort of a new definition. There's really no laws around it. They have to spell this out on sort of the front of the label so the consumers are not misled. But consumers are misled every single day, and you'll see a couple pictures on the upcoming slides of some natural products out there. But the big concern that you should be concerned about is what the label does not mean. For example, animal products raised with the use of artificial hormones can be labeled natural as well as genetically modified organisms. So even though it says natural and it might not have artificial ingredients, it could be a genetically modified product. And natural absolutely does not mean organic. So here's a few pictures of, the food companies have caught on. They realize that we're demanding healthier products, and they're coming out with all of taking their pre-existing product and trying to find a way to make it natural. But because there's no clear definition or laws in terms of what actually has to be natural, is really, you really have to learn to take matters into your own hands. You can see right here, Pepsi even has an all-natural cola. Popcorn, Snapple, baked potato chips. I mean, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of new natural products on the market now. GMOs. So food and food products made with genetically modified ingredients are not labeled in this country as they are in others. So in the absence of mandatory labeling, the non-GMO project was created to give consumers the informed choice they deserve. So I think this is wonderful. This is a huge step in the right direction. If you go into the grocery store now, you're going to see a lot of labels with or without this seal. Some will say made with non-GMO ingredients, and some will start to have this seal. And this seal is on, it's probably increased since this last information that I have, but it's on over 6,000 products now. And Whole Foods has committed to certifying the 365 everyday products, and they're carrying this non-GMO project seal. So this is a great way to avoid those. They're not necessarily all organic products, but at least you know that they have they don't have genetically modified ingredients. And the top products that you want to be worried about, which is in a lot of processed foods, are corn, soy, canola oil, cottonseed oil, and sugar. Now you can see canola oil is on there, and that is an oil that we recommend because of its high omega-3 content compared to others, as well as its high smoking point to cook with. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop recommending that. I just recommend buying a very high quality canola oil and preferably organic. There's certain products that I definitely recommend organic, and that's definitely one of them in terms of these processed foods. You'll pay a little bit more for it, but it should last quite a long time. It shouldn't make too big of a difference on your wallet. These two websites are really great to find out what stores, what grocery stores are participating in this. You can go online. All the big chain grocery stores are coming out with their own sort of non-GMO and maybe organic line. So I highly recommend when you have a chance to go peek on that. You can also, I think they have an app for the GMO shopping guide. That's very helpful. So that's all of the front labeling. Now, going on to the back side, it used to be that, we turn over to look at the nutrition facts label, to look at the calories, to look at the fat and the protein and the carbs, and we're still going to that. We always recommend using our core ratio equation when looking to buy non-core foods. And just as a refresher, for those that haven't seen this for a while, our core ratio equation tells you, it lets you know what the glycemic impact is going to be on your blood sugar. We're looking for a ratio less than 2. So if you flip over that food product and look at the total carbohydrates, look underneath it to the added sugar and the fiber. You want to add the sugar back in, subtract the fiber, and then divide that by the total fat plus the total protein. You'll get a number. We're looking for something less than 2. That way it doesn't raise your blood sugar. But that's only the first step. It's only telling you the glycemic response. So you also want to look at these other things. Make sure the saturated fat content is less than 5 grams. The reason being why we really want to make sure that the fat is not skewing the equation in any way, and you want to keep that saturated fat intake low. You want to look for processed ingredients. This is, again, you're going to pull out your detective hat and look at the ingredient list and make sure that there's not 50 words that you don't even understand what it is. We're looking for high nutrient density, but this ratio equation is a perfect first step, especially when it comes to bars, the quick on-the-go items. Expiration date. So with the expiration date, there's a few, I just thought this would be a helpful slide because so many times they'll stand in front of their fridge and they're throwing things out when actually some of the use-by date, some of the sell-by dates don't always refer to home storage and use after products. The use-by dates usually refer to best quality and are not safety dates. So here's sort of I'll just go through each one quickly. The sell-by date tell the store how long to display the product for sale, and you should buy that product before the date expires. The best if used by or before dates recommend for best flavor or quality. It is not a purchase or safety date. The used by date is the one it's the last date recommended for the use of the product while at peak quality. The date has been determined by the manufacturer of the product. So there, you do have some room. That you want to make sure that when it comes to any meat or poultry, you definitely use that by the use-by date or get it into the freezer. But some other products, you have a little bit of leeway, and a lot of these are just determined by the manufacturer. And there's some more in-depth information on this if you're curious about it. So scoping out the ingredient list. And going back, we talked about the nutrition facts label and an expiration date. So going into more detail about that ingredient list. The ingredient order matters, and most of you probably know that. Their ingredients are listed in descending order, and food makers are required by law to list an order based on the amounts used. This is a really helpful tool, just even a basic tool when looking at yogurt, or if you're looking to buy a bread for a post-workout window. You always want that first ingredient can really tell you a lot about the product. If you're buying something that's stated that it's whole wheat on the front, and you don't see whole wheat as the first ingredient, you know that something's sort of off there. We really want to make sure that the first few ingredients are not any of these three right here. Partially hydrogenated oil, which is otherwise known as trans fat. And yes, trans fats technically have been removed from the food supply in terms of being sold products, but they are allowed to have up to 0.5 grams per serving. So if you're having more than one serving, you're probably getting more trans fat than is recommended. You do want to make sure that I would avoid anything with that, but especially if it's one of the first few ingredients. High fructose corn syrup, also known as corn syrup now. You definitely want to beware any products with that in. And then in terms of sugar, sugar is going to be in a lot of processed products. You just want to make sure it's not one of the first few ingredients, and those are some of the names of the other ones. Here's just a look at a random ingredient label. You can see the first ingredient is milled corn, and the second one is sugar, followed by corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, molasses, which is used to dye a lot of breads to make them look brown, salt, partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. So this is definitely not a great product right here, just looking at those ingredients. You just really need to break it down even further, going beyond just the calories. What to avoid? Some other things to avoid when you're looking at these ingredient lists. This is not an exclusive full list, but these are some of the ones that I avoid or try to avoid most of the time. Any sort of artificial food coloring is the most widely used additives in food products today. There's so many different names for them. The big ones that we really want to avoid are, you see things like red 40 and yellow 5 and 6. Anything that has any sort of number after a color, you definitely want to avoid that. There's really no need for it. Giving an example of Kraft macaroni and cheese in our country, that it uses food dyes, yellow 5 or 6. I'm not sure which one off the top of my head. But in other countries, they've removed them. So if they're not necessary, you really definitely want to avoid those. We want to avoid products that have MSG in them, which you won't really find too much in any of these processed products, because one, you shouldn't be buying too many of them, but two, it's been removed from, this amino acid has been removed from a lot of products. It's a flavor enhancer in processed foods. Aspartame is the most widely used artificial sweetener. We do really want to avoid that for a number of reasons. Splenda, which is sucralose and sweet and low, are also sort of on that avoid list for most of the time. High fructose corn syrup is the big one, and you've probably seen commercials on this. I call this the next trans fat. It's going to probably be removed. It might be decades from now. It's also referred to as corn syrup. You can disassociate this with very low quality products. So if you're ever buying a salad dressing or anything like that, you can look it over, and it's high fructose corn syrup, and it's a very low quality. The same thing for cereals. Again, these are items that you won't really be buying quite often, but anytime you see that, I usually just say to put it right back down on the shelf. And the rest of these other DHA, BHT, these are a lot of preservatives, the sodium nitrite, the same thing. RBGH, the bovine growth hormone. This is what I highly, highly recommend to avoid. But the good thing is that this is in milk. It's a hormone used to boost milk production. But even if you can't go the organic route in milk, if you're buying milk, you can buy non-antibiotic, non-hormone used milk. So what am I buying? So I just wanted to sort of, we've talked about a lot of different things here. So in terms of fresh, frozen, and canned products, you can see I haven't really talked too much about canned. Canned sort of on the bottom of my list, but if you take all of those suggestions that I give, I definitely think have a combination of fresh and frozen. Things that I can think of as canned to keep on minimum that to keep on hand are maybe a can of organic black beans. I always have something like that in the fridge, but otherwise canned are usually not as high quality. Frozen, very high quality because it's picked at its peak and then frozen, and sometimes frozen can be even more high quality than fresh because of how long the fresh fruits and vegetables have been sitting around on the shelf at your market or at your house. Whereas frozen, it's picked at its peak, it's high nutrient quality, goes right in your freezer, and then you usually are consuming it right away. So that's why I usually push that if someone's cannot always keep fresh vegetables or fruits in their house. Search for true whole grains when you are buying them. Don't be fooled by the color. As I mentioned before, a lot of quote-unquote natural coloring, caramel and molasses are used to dye different grains. Really start looking at that first ingredient and make sure it is sort of a whole grain product, and prioritize whole grains and fiber. So even though you might have a workout window and you've done a tough workout and you're trying to just maintain weight, you're not trying to improve body composition, so you're utilizing your post-workout window for grains, I'm still always going to recommend to choose the higher quality ones that I mentioned before, things like quinoa and any type of whole wheat product. Diversify your dairy products. Low-fat and fat-free choices. When it comes to Greek yogurt, I always get asked, should I buy 0% or should I buy 2%? I always say carry both. You need fat to absorb your fat-soluble vitamins. So have a combination of both. Everything does not need to be fat-free. Definitely have a few different choices in there. And include some non-dairy milk. When I'm talking about the milks, I'm talking about rice milk and almond milk, hemp milk, flaxseed milk. These are a wonderful way to sort of diversify. You can make great smoothies using these as a base rather than using cow's milk. If you have access to our Core Diet member area, I have a wonderful smoothie guide up there that sort of goes through different ways to use to make your smoothies more interesting and using different liquid bases other than just milk. And choosing lean meats and protein, don't always just go to your normal grilled chicken breast or, canned tuna. Try to diversify that as well and include fish once a week. You certainly do not need to eat red meat at all, but if you are someone that enjoys red meat, we always say try to keep it no more than once a week and choose more of the leaner choices. So some tips for the fridge. You're at home, you made your shopping list, you've gone shopping for the week. I'm not sure. I think a lot of people end up throwing a lot of fruits and vegetables out sometimes when they buy too much. Many times it's not that you didn't plan or you didn't eat, but sometimes you just might have not stored it correctly. And there actually are some fruits and vegetables that you don't want to store together at the same time. And again, if you want more in-depth information on this, you can certainly write me. I can send you a link of a really great article on this. But just sort of as a quickie, things like apples, you would not. Those are a gas releaser, and those are the things that speed up ripening and can lead to the premature decay of other vegetables. So if you are storing your broccoli or any of your leafy greens in the same container that has, say, an apple in it, that apple is going to release this colorless gas and just speed up the ripening of those dark leafy greens, and they're going to wilt and die. So take a look at how you are storing things, because you might be surprised that some things you might not be storing together, or you should not be storing them together. Oh, and here we go. Here's everything that I just said. The gas releasers that you do want to refrigerate are the apples, apricots, cantaloupe, figs, and honeydew. And the gas releases that you don't want to refrigerate are your avocados, banana, nectarines, peaches, pears, plums, and tomatoes. So this bottom list are the ones that you want to keep away from the above. Your bananas, so if you're keeping your bananas on your counter, keep it away from anything that is a gas releaser. And this is, as you can see, when it comes to bananas, and it depends on if it's unripe or ripe. And the same thing for most of your greens are the ones that you want to keep away from your gas releasers. So at this time, I thank you for joining us. Hopefully, I'm going to go through some questions right now, but hopefully you have picked up a few tips to make your life a little bit easier navigating the grocery store. One topic that I didn't really touch on that I thought about adding in here, but I didn't think about in terms of time, and I've written on this, is meal planning. And going back to the beginning when I suggested planning your dinners every night for the week, and I think many people, when they sit down to do that, they don't really know where to start. And again, you can refer to, I think it's one of my blog posts, it talks about meal planning. where to begin, whether you want to begin with theme night, assigning each night whatever theme, if you have children, if you want to do Mexican night, things like that, maybe you do fajitas, low-carb wraps, or if you just want to take your proteins and assign each night a different protein and go from there. During my my CSA season, I start my meal planning based on what I picked up from my vegetables each week. So each of you will have a different starting point, and I think that's what you need to sit down and decide before you absorb any of this, where you want your starting point to be when you plan your meals, and then you can sort of go on from there. So at this time, I'm going to look to see if any of you have some questions, and I'll go through them right now and answer those. Do you have any questions right now? Just pop them in there. And I'm not going to end this right now. I don't really see any questions yet. We'll wait a few minutes because sometimes it can take a bit for these questions to come through. Okay, it doesn't look like anyone has any questions for some reason. If you're typing a question and it's not going through, I apologize. Just shoot me an email. That hasn't happened before, but usually I always have a few questions. And I thank you for joining us tonight. I always say again, if you ever have ideas or something that you want to learn more about, you can always shoot me an email. We always listen to our athletes and clients. We want to educate you on what you want to learn about. So we'll always look at that and maybe try to plan something a few months down the line. So feel free to email me with that. Or if there are any questions that you didn't get a chance to answer tonight, this is recorded, so we will place it in the next few days in the webinar, recorded webinar section of the member area if you want to go back and review any of the slides that I had on here tonight. So I thank you, and I hope you join us again for the next one. Have a great week, and happy 4th of July.